All right. Well, I'm excited, everybody. Today, I have my favorite guest of all time on our show, my beautiful wife, Julie, of 19 years married to like 21 years together.
21, yeah.
So we were going to call this this podcast for all you guys watching, Love in Real Estate, 21-year journey of Chris and Julie. It's going to be fun. I mean, we got so many, with all the years we have behind us, not only in the business, but life. And if you really dive into the whole concept of it, think about it. You're not only living together as husband and wife, you have to work together. So we got a lot to unpack in a short period of time. And I think it's going to be helpful for some of the people that are on here. There's a lot of husband and wife realtor teams. There's a lot of husband and wife teams in all different kinds of businesses. And hopefully, they can relate to some of our journey or not relate to it, and we can share some of our ups and some of our downs. So I'm really excited to have you on the show this year. So I'm going to share a little bit of my view of the last, not even just the last 21 years, but maybe just even the first few years of how it all started, because I don't think you really were looking to get into it wasn't your dream to be in the mortgage business, I don't think, right?
No.
So what were you doing? I know what you were doing, but for the people watching, what were you doing before you decided to come on board, before I kind of drugged you and dragged you into this mayhem that we call the mortgage industry?
So prior to, I was a bar manager, and then I started working seasonally for the Massachusetts Department of Revenue, doing income taxes. Okay. And then prior to that, for 3 or 4 years, I worked for a CPA, helping her business with taxes and quarterlies for business owners.
And you did that. You pretty much did all her work from what I gathered and what I saw, because I think you were kind of winding down that the first year we were together. You were doing some of that last year. Mm-hmm. And it sounded like from what you were telling me, you did most of that, which that being said, that's a big piece of what you did now. So it's kind of easy for you to transition into the mortgage business, because a big part of our business is breaking down income, breaking down tax returns, especially for self-employed people. But when we go back to that, I think it was 2003, I want to say, like the end of the spring, summer of 2003. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I was actually interviewing people, because I was at a spot, for those of you watching, I'm very good on what I do in the mortgage industry. I'm good on the relationship building. I don't necessarily like the paperwork side. I can do it because I had been doing it at that point for about 6-7 years, really front end heavy on doing our front end processing. And for those of you who've been in the industry a long time, we didn't have the automation that we do now with technology, where it does a lot of the stuff for you. So, in the beginning, me, with the way my brain works, it was difficult for me to just do tons of different businesses and then have to do a lot of paperwork. So I was at a point then, I was probably doing 7 to 10 loans a month, but 10 would have been my max that I could do, because I honestly would self-sabotage myself to get more business, because it would be a lot more work that I didn't like to do. So at that time, I don't even know if we really were just starting dated. I was told my brother, who was my business partner. So for those of you watching, I've been in the business since 97, and I was with a company for the first 2 years, and then I went and started our own mortgage company with some friends. And then in 2000, I want to say 1 or 2002, I opened up my own branch with my brother. And, we were gung-ho about it, and I was starting to get to a point where I was getting a lot of traction and getting a lot more business, but I wasn't liking that extra work that I had to do. And I interviewed a bunch of people, and I'm thinking, I'm not even going to go there, because this is going to sound really bad. I was like thinking, how can I get away with doing this when I'm spending a lot of money? And at the time, we had just started dating, and I knew you were sharp. I knew everything. I'm like, wow, man, she would be really good at this job. But at the time, my brother couldn't understand why I would hire someone I was dating. Like, he's like, this is going to ruin our business, da-da-da-da-da-da. He just kept going on and on and on about this. So at the time, and I want to hear your side of the story, because at the time, I think we had about 2,500 square feet, somewhere like that, of office space. I had
It's
about
pretty big.
20 cubicles in that spot, with about 6 of them being used at the time. We had just started out. And I always believed to be with my troops, be with my team. I was on the floor. I had a bigger cubicle, not that much bigger, but it's a little bit bigger than the standard cubicle. And my brother said, she's not getting a computer. She's not getting a desk. If you want her to work for you, she's got to sit with you in this cubicle. I said, you know what, John? I said, that's fine. Fine. And we sat. I think I get a little fuzzy with years in the timeline here, but I think it was probably a full year anyways that we were in that office in Berlin.
Probably, yeah.
And we sat back to back in this cubicle, and I think you were using my laptop or I used my laptop. We couldn't even give you a computer.
Your dinosaur laptop.
Yeah, so you used the laptop and I used my computer, and we started growing the business from there. I think we ended up landing somewhere between 30 plus loans in some months. I mean, we were killing it. We were absolutely killing it, and that's exactly what I needed. I knew what my weaknesses were, and I said, I always knew from business that don't do what you don't like to do. Find someone that can do it and someone that's better than you to do it, and then do what you're really good at. And if I stay in my lane, we were going to be super successful. So walk me through what you thought. I mean, because you're coming into a business that I had already been doing for 7 years. You're coming into a new relationship at the time for you and for me. So that was kind of tough, I'm sure, in a sense, like, okay, I'm going to not just date this guy, I'm going to work with this guy. I mean, and I put some ground rules up because I was a little bit scared, because I didn't want to have to be in a position where, I'm your boyfriend and I can't be mean. Not that I'm mean, but this is business. This is the way I'm going to feed. If we're together, it's going to be how I feed our family, or feed me. If it was just on me, this is how I eat, right? This is how I provide for whatever household that I'm providing. So we were up front with, once we walk through these doors, we're business partners. But at the time, there was really not a lot of rocky times in the beginning. It was never rocky. It was a honeymoon phase for the first few years. So we didn't have a lot to gripe about. You actually did exactly what I asked you to do, and it was perfect. And then at some point along the lines, you thought you knew more than me, and you had bucked the system a little bit, but we'll talk about that later on. Tell me a little bit about how your experiences was from when you started, me asking you to even come do the business. You were driving to Boston for an hour and a half each way, and what that looked like for you and how that felt.
So I enjoyed working in Boston, just the drive and the hours just didn't work. So I was looking for something else. So I wasn't scared of it. I know I can pick things up fast. So I really didn't think of that. Working back to back, I was able to listen to half of every phone conversation. So I knew that's, that's how you taught me. But it was just me listening to everything that was going on. So it was funny I walked past, open cubicles and desks and things, and I couldn't have one, but it was fine. So I'm going to go back to the part you said, how can you do this cheap? So you actually never paid me a paycheck. And I actually brought you business. I bought my mom and her friends all refinanced too.
It worked out well for me. I will not complain about any of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, and it wasn't that I necessarily didn't want to pay you. It just was the way that it flowed. I mean, I was just paying for everything else anyway, so it just didn't really matter. I tried to compensate that way because I was going to spend the money either way. And at the time, I had a house with a few of my buddies that we had a house on a lake, and I think we really kind of started. It was right around when summer was starting to heat up, and you didn't really probably care for me to stay there anyways because they had a DJ booth there on the weekends, boats and jet skis. It was a wild place to live. And I felt really bad because I'm like, well, I'm staying at her house more, so I should help her with her payments. So it kind of worked out for both of us in a way.
Yeah, it's
probably
just the joke.
Probably more so for me, but for both of us. And the joke is really on me at the end of the day because you control all of that stuff at this point now. So when we decided to work together, kind of what's your view on when we made a move early at the end of 2003. I want to say the beginning of 2004 is when we moved over to Worcester, Mass, over into our own, a different location, a bigger location. And at the time, at that point, we had already proven ourselves 8 months with my brother. And you could have sat anywhere in the office at that point, but we still chose to take the bigger office where we could both stay in the same office because we had a proven system. And I think what's important is how that relationship grew on just like putting together the right systems and things that would ultimately come to what we grew it to down the road. So kind of walk through that experience for you on your side of it, learning the business by osmosis in a sense. You know, you were able to listen and you kind of heard the back end on the sales side of it and the breaking down and structuring the loans and how to put the loan together for the underwriters, which, by the way, was much different than it is today. I mean, for us, because we work for a bank, so we're now it goes directly in-house underwriting. So the processes and systems are much more seamless and easier in some ways. I think it's easier, but it takes away from the knowing, if that makes sense. Meaning, you were so involved in the deal and the process and the client in the past that you really knew everything about it. So it was hard for people to drop the ball because you were so involved in it from the beginning to the end. And that's where I think you have the advantage now looking back. I mean, you know every program, every product, you know where to get that stuff just because of how resourceful you had to be when you first learned the business. Walk us through those early years because you had to do a lot of that stuff. What did that look like now compared to what you're seeing today?
Well, I think back then, people retain information differently. So I think writing an application for somebody and walking through that conversation with them, where do you work? Where did you move? Where did you live? Is different than today, someone just doing an online application.
Correct.
Because even myself, I've done online applications. If I've lived somewhere for 1 year and 10 months, I'm putting 2 years so I don't have to put in more information.
Correct.
We used to have to touch every pay stub, touch every W-2, touch every tax return, bank statement, all pages.
Correct.
Now it's all just electronic or someone scanning it to you. I mean, we dealt with faxes and printing out 150-page color appraisals to
getting
put in.
Mailed to us.
Yeah. Yeah, we were waiting weeks for mails to come from a pay stub.
I mean, if you even think about that, I think about the money we spent on, when we went to the bigger office where we had about 80 bankers and we had to have DHL, which would be your UPS nowadays or FedEx.
The yellow truck.
And what we would do is we would send the documents out in a package with a returned envelope for their docs, and you're spending $5-6 a package times hundreds and hundreds of loans a month that we were closing at that time. Man, we would have had a lot. We probably would have had a lot more properties down here, but now if we would have not had those bills.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that part. We had to print out the 150-page application.
Yeah,
to have them
$300,000 to $100,000 in some months just on DHL. It's crazy when you look back at those expenses. But to your point, back then, you would get that fax or you would get that envelope in the mail with that tax return, and you literally had to have it. You'd have it right in front of you, so you'd have to read it, you'd have to go through it, and you'd have to actually do it. Where today's process is a little bit easier for most people, and I say when I say easier, it's really not easier unless you're doing the other steps. It can be easier, or it can be worse and make your process longer in the sense that if someone's just sending it to your email and you're just putting it into the folder because it's there and you're not vetting it out, which you can see happens a lot in this business, whether it's a fallout from another bank that comes to us because it fell out. But I think it's important for people, not that it's important for people to understand that it's really important for the process to really be crystal clear on your answers and stuff like that. And that was your piece of it. But tell us a little bit about our journey together from, we went from Berlin, Mass, which is central, a little bit more towards Boston, and then we went into Worcester market. When we went into Worcester, and we were there, we went to that office on Elm Street to James Street where we got really big. And that was a pivotal point. And I think that probably affected, I don't even know how that may have affected you, because that was when my brother and I decided to go our own separate ways. And not in a bad way. John wanted to remain a small banker. He didn't want to get big. I'm very ambitious, and I have a really high, if any of you guys watching know the DISC assessment, I'm a 99D, whether it's natural or not in my natural place. So I just go. I don't stop. So I wanted to get big. He didn't. And at that time, we decided to buy out all this furniture in this other office, take this whole other office over, and then start building. But how was that for you? Because at that time, you kind of moved, your role kind of changed a little bit from more or less of a loan partner for me, loan partner / maybe processor, into more of an operational role, to where you, and at some point you were kind of even originating at that point. How was that journey for you? Because it was complete chaos. I look back, it was controlled chaos more than chaos, because we really had some good people in place in the places for our processing teams and all that. So we had a really good flow for the type of volume that we were doing. But walk through your perspective of that.
I think it changed drastically, actually, because I was only working with you and your clients, and then I became a boss.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Loan officers coming to me, or processors coming to me to ask questions, and then on top of, writing people paychecks. So I was doing all facets of the business, not just, not just originating, helping. So.
And that was, if you look back, that would have been 2 years by year 2 of you being in the business, which would have put you at you were 25 then?
Mm-hmm.
Probably, because I think I was 29 probably at that time. So you were young. Looking back in retrospect, we were both young, but you were especially young to be kind of thrown into, that industry at that time, because we could have been in any other industry and there would have been a curve. The curve would have been a regular curve, but we happened to be in an industry that it was on the rise, but then that 04, 05 point, it was like a straight up.
Yeah.
And we had tons of bankers coming into the business. And it was interesting because on a personal side, we just worked 24/7. And at that point, I think we got engaged in, I want to say 2004, about a little year and a half or so into our relationship, a year and a half. And then shortly after announcing our wedding, you found out you were pregnant with our son, Chris. So it was, there was a lot there. So we were literally changing into our new business, into our new place, which was 5 times bigger. A baby coming in 3 months, a wedding. I think the same month we opened the doors to the business.
Yeah, we kind of do things a little.
We literally went from, we moved our business the same month we got married, because we got married on January 7th. Tell me a little bit about how it affected your personal life in a sense of, and I think I really want to share this because of those people that are working together, those husband and wives. Here's my thought on it for those watching. People would always say to me, I don't understand how you can work with your wife. They all say that all the time. Like, I would kill my wife. I'd kill my husband, blah, 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 blah. And I never understood that concept because, I don't know, I remember as a kid, you have your best friends, right? You have the people that you hang out with. And I could have slept over at my best friend's house every night. I wouldn't have cared if I ever went home. Or vice versa. They could sleep over my house. And when someone would say, your wife or your husband, I'm like, that's supposed to be your best friend. That's supposed to be the person you want to spend your time with. I never could comprehend or understand why would you be with that person if you can't work with them? To me, it just didn't make sense. You could be with the person, your buddies, 24/7 if you had the chance, and you could do it. So that was always my concept. I'm more than okay with that because one, I want to be around you. 1, 2, 3, whatever. Or 1, I want to be together, right? 2, I know I want to have your back and you're going to have my back because of the relationship, or you should and I should have your back. And for those 2 reasons alone, why wouldn't anyone want to do it? But with that comes the pressures of, all right, is this, where was it aligned? Did you find that we had a line? Because again, I'm over the top with everything, and I think I go too fast. I just run, and I don't think about not that I don't think about the consequence. I don't know that there's a consequence, and we're overworking, or it's if I'm all in something, I'm all in. So I want to hear from your point of view as the wife and business partner of somebody that's a high D, because you're completely, if we go off of the disc, you're completely opposite of what I am. You're high on the S and the C, the compliance. How did that affect you? Right, wrong, or different? I take my lumps well, so it doesn't matter. How do you think, did it interfere with the way the personal life was, or versus the business life? How was that journey, especially in those early years when we were both thrown to the fire in a busy, crazy market?
I think it's what we did. So it was all I knew. I didn't know any different of not working with you. I will say there's times I have wanted to kill you. And it's not easy all the time. I think, sitting here and thinking, and back then, it was probably easier to separate it than it is now. Because back then, whether we went home at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, we shut the computers off. We didn't take them home with us.
Correct.
So maybe you would take a phone call, or if we were at a sport event, it was okay for me to watch you be on the phone on the sidelines because I knew you were making money, which over the years I've heard and seen relationships where they're in different types of business. So the wife or the husband doesn't understand, why do you have to take a phone call at 8 and 9 o'clock at night?
Right.
Why do you have to go to someone's house at 8 o'clock at night and sign documents? It was just what we did. So it was accepted because I knew that it was work. But now it's harder because now, like, I work from home. You have your laptop. Clients will text you 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, Sunday during church, or, Sunday at 9 o'clock. How's my loan? Am I close? So it's harder to separate yourself from your business now because everything has to be instantaneous.
I didn't even think, I really never thought that far into it, but you're right. Back then, I forget about the times without a laptop or even a smartphone. I mean, because you had a cell phone, but you weren't getting emails. I mean, I can literally originate a file from my phone. I can go onto the application. I can see the docs that they sent in. I can see everything. So you really don't have that escape, that solace, if you will. Like some people say, when I'm done work, I'm done work. And I don't think it's just our industry. I think in general now, technology has taken over so much that people have the ability to work nonstop. And I don't think, I thought I guess if we're honest with it, we think we worked a ton. I was in the office late. I might have been in the office till 8, probably later sometimes. And then I would come home, where now I'm home, but sometimes I have my office, but sometimes you wake up, I'm at my desk when I get home from the gym. It could be 7 o'clock. I'm working. So whereas before I wasn't getting up at 7. We weren't really texting people that much in 2005 or 7 or 8 even. So it wasn't that you were really interacting unless you took a phone call. And a phone call is a lot different than having to actually do busy work on a computer or whatnot. And I think the technology is a distraction as well based on the different social networks. How much money that we spent in advertising. I think we had a $30,000 a month radio ad budget that we were spending on radio. TV was probably $2,000 or $3,000 a month. Our budget was probably $40,000 a month in just advertising. We were on billboards, taxi cabs, all that crazy stuff. However, now it's geared towards social media. So the downside to that is I would go for radio ads. You and I would go up, and you did radio ads. People don't know this, but Julie would go up to the different big radio stations in Boston and throughout New England, and we would do the voiceovers for our ads. But that was one day. You know, you go up there one day, you knock out your ad spend for the, you know, you probably run those ads for 2 months or whatever, and then go back in and maybe do some stuff. But now with social media, I find it's almost like it's almost like smoking was back in the day. 'Cause remember I had an office, so this is kind of funny because remember my office was in the front, and I'd always keep the curtain up, and it would be like the walk of shame for the guys and the girls that were smoking. So they would have to walk by my office and see me, and I'm looking right at them as they're going downstairs to smoke. But it's amazing to me now, looking back, that it was just natural for people to every hour or less to go downstairs for 15 or 20 minutes to smoke cigarettes. I mean, it was like nothing to go walk into my office and see a horde of people downstairs smoking cigarettes. But the same thing goes for today. How many people are sitting there, right? Our employees, your employees, just people in general that are scrolling the technology cigarette, right? I mean, okay, I think I can just go on Facebook now or Instagram. Oh, I'm doing it for work. But BS, you're not doing it for work. You know, not all the time. I mean, but it does consume the same amount of time, if not more. But if you use it right, and I think we've transitioned to, I mean, radio, what's radio? You got iTunes, you have everything, all the other options, Spotify. You got all these options to where, and that's just a segment of your market. So where we're more and isolated back then, we could isolate a market with radio because that's our demographic. We're in Massachusetts, or we're using a Connecticut or Rhode Island station, and it was this. But now if I advertised on Spotify, I mean, maybe it goes, we can demographic that area, but how many people are really listening to that? A lot of people are listening to podcasts like we're doing here. They're utilizing their time a lot different than they were then. So we spent a ton of money on that kind of stuff. And looking back at that kind of a spend on what we spent now, and what do you see now based on the business and where we're going now as a company with the resources that we can use? What have you seen? What have you seen as huge changes for us and for you, for your job in a sense, and your responsibility?
You mean with marketing?
Yeah, marketing and in general. Like, what do you see yourself doing more of these days than you were? Like then, you're fixing a lot of files still. You're still doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I still go through files. If that's the part of the business that I like probably the most, is structuring the loans, and if there's an issue or a problem, trying to, think outside the box and fix it or come up with a solution. As far as marketing goes, both you and I, we do a lot of stuff on social media. We've got a lot of business from social media, but not necessarily paid for it other than time.
Correct.
So
where you can get a captive audience for, you can build a brand, and as long as people like you and they're watching you, they're keeping an eye. I mean, we get a lot of business. Facebook specifically drives a lot of business to us probably since, I think I started Facebook in 2007, and everyone's like, oh, there he goes again, putting more pictures, posting more pictures. But I'll tell you, I got a lot of followers for just a guy who doesn't really know what he's doing, and I think I got close to 6,000 people following.
People are watching.
They're watching, and then they're messaging me asking me for mortgages. So, here it is. It's the people that want to do business with us, and there's more that come as we do things like this. So I think for anyone who's a real estate agent or in any kind of line of work, people want to do a business with people they like, or they think they can relate to. So, my advice, and I'd like to hear your advice. So you built some pretty big groups, into the tens of thousands on Facebook through some of the real estate pages that you created. I would 100%, depending on what type of work you're in. If you're a business to consumer type of business, Facebook is by bar none the best platform you could plug into and really build yourself a good community of people that are going to like. And the good thing is, it's only going to be people that like you, right? So, you're going to have the people that don't like you watching. Trust me, they're always watching. They're probably watching more than the people that like you, but they're not going to interfere with anything. They're just going to watch, and that's fine. And that's good. It's the best. What do they call that? It's the best compliment, right? when
Yeah.
people are watching. So I'm okay with that. But what do you see different when you were building out these pages? Kind of walk through that experience of like how much impact you had on. I think it was like planting great seeds or something. You created one page back in, I must be like 2012 or
I
13.
don't even remember what year it was, but I did one where I just said, I was 15 years in the mortgage and real estate industry. I want to help you grow your business. Because at one point, I utilized my real estate license and took you gave me all your leads.
Mm-hmm.
And I was, I had a lot of buyers and, houses for sale. And I brought some of the marketing techniques for free to these people that were real estate agents. And then they were starting to friend me
On
my
side.
regular page.
Right.
And then they realized that I was in mortgages. So then they wanted, because I was giving them free content
Correct.
and helping them grow their business. They just wanted to, in turn, do business with me. So it was perfect.
Because you created yourself as an expert in that space. And I want to say that was like 2014, because you wrote like a bunch of books or something, so you were kind of posting those books on there. And that was really what was a catalyst for those pages. But let's talk about, one thing I want to talk about is how, I know everything's kind of blurred to me, and I think it's a blur to you, but you might have some insight on it. End of 07, 08 happened, and then the world kind of stopped. And at that point, we had bought a couple pieces of real estate. We sold some of them, and we had one commercial building that we were using as a different business in it at the time. And when that happened, we decided to move from our huge office, because obviously the attrition rate of all the bankers that kind of went through, and we held on to a few people that could survive through the business. We didn't necessarily have super bad years, but they just weren't as good as what they were obviously in the heydays, right? So talk about that entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, I think that was like a clothing store that you really, the storefront worked as more of a warehouse, if you will. And you had your mom and her friends working. Kind of walk through that little section of life. It was like a little snapshot of a year or so, probably a year and a half or so that we had that before we moved to it.
I don't know how long it was open, but we did have, we did buy that commercial property. We renovated it. We put the clothing store downstairs. My mom had like a craft shop over in the little garage. And then we created a mortgage office upstairs for a branch, for someone else that was going to run the branch for us. And then after, the industry started to change, we realized, let's move there, which was great because we had about 30,000 people that drove by every day and seen our sign, and we were on the radio.
High traffic.
So then we were hitting people. They were visually seeing us and hearing us, which is huge when you're doing marketing, because it's not going to be just one avenue. That's going to make them call you. Yeah,
that was on a major route, as a Route 20 for those of you who know Massachusetts well. That route runs from the end of Massachusetts all the way, I believe, to California. So it's a very busy. It does. It's a main. It was before they put major highways in. That was the major highway, pretty much across the country.
Yeah.
And then they put in the big major highways. Obviously, Mass Pike kind of took over that for those of you that know the area. So we had a high traffic area, which was pretty nice to have that, and we did get some drive-ins. But I think one of our keys that we always started, because of the way I started in the business, was I was reaching out more for refis when I first got in the business. So I necessarily was going after the clients first. I wasn't going after people to give me the clients. I always built my business off going to the clients first and then sharing that client with partners. Which today I think we had a total of over 10,000 closings, but we didn't have emails and all that over the first 7-8 years. No one was emailing in 2002 and 3. It was mailing out packages and bringing them. So I think we have it down to like 5,000 working past client lists that we work, which is pretty good for the 20-something years that we've been in business, which gives us a pretty good count, right? That being said, how do you see us working that list now, and what do you see that we pass a fair amount of business now? And that's more on what you do with some of the systems that you've created on with Bonzo and some of the other stuff. Tell me where you see the business going moving forward.
So yeah, I mean, I don't even remember when our first purchase was, because I think it was just refinances for years and years.
Yeah.
So it was just the clients that, you know, would call you, and every now and again would get someone that was going to buy a house. But I think probably our move to Florida maybe was when we really heavily started to go, you know what I mean, for realtors to give us business, new
Right.
market.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit, you know, in Massachusetts before we left. But I think now I see that, you know, with social media, we need to go back to reaching
Right.
the clients first. And there's a lot of different changes that are happening in the industry across
Right.
the board that, you know, we can help educate them and guide them through
Right.
and make the right choices after, you know, 21 years, and you've been doing it for 27.
27 years, 27. Yeah, long time. But I think what's important for people is it doesn't make sense to put the wagon in front of the horse,
Yeah.
right? So this is what I found. I've seen it happen a lot, too much, is, you know, you have someone that comes to you because they went to the real estate agent and they told them they want to buy a $700,000 house because they looked at all the other houses and they said, I don't like any of those houses. I want that house. And they start looking at these houses, and now you're vested in them. When you start seeing them or you even go to them, and then they come to me for a pre-approval. Well, a lot of times what you're pre-approved for and what you want to spend are way
Completely
off from each other, two different numbers, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I have a conversation with someone, I say, I may be able to pre-qualify you for that $700,000-$800,000 house. You'll qualify, no problem. However, are you prepared to have a $5,000 a month payment, or do you have a payment in mind?
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important for people to come to us first, right? And not just for that reason. That's one reason, right? So you really get you don't want to start, you can't unsee what you saw.
You can't go to a $500,000 house and then realize you got to buy a $325,000. You can't go. It just won't work.
It won't work.
You'll
at
never
all.
be satisfied.
It's not going to work. You need to get that pre-vetted first, and we see that mistake happen over and over and over. The next thing is we can help you vet out the real estate agents. We work with a lot of great agents. However, you may be working with a great agent, and with some of the things that I look at, especially in markets like our market here, and right now market up in New England is pretty hot right now. What happens is if you're not using the right agent, you're going to lose the bid
Yeah.
because the other agent doesn't know who you are.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not a full-time agent and you're not a pro in this business, and you're expecting that agent that doesn't do a lot of business to win you the bid, I'm not saying that they won't, but I'm saying you want to get a rock star helping you get that house or find that house you want, because there's bidding wars. There could be a chance where someone could even put in the same bid as you, but since that other agent is a top performing agent in the area and people know who they are and they know that they, you know, their clients close because they're good borrowers, that's going to be part of that decision making for that seller's agent. When they're talking to that client, they might say, hey, we got the same offers here. However, I've worked with that agent before. Their clients, they close a lot of business. I mean, that's just the way it is. Now, if I'm the seller and someone tells me that, I'm going to be like, well, you know the business better. That's why I hired you. So if you're thinking we should take this because this guy does a lot of business and closes loans, I'm going on your expertise on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's more important than ever, because of, you can look at social media pages and you could think somebody is an absolute rock star and they're not. You know, they could be working 2 jobs. They could be working, this could be their 3rd job. And it's nice for them to close that 2 deals a year or 3 deals because it puts that extra 20 grand in their pocket, but it's not going to best serve you as a client. So, I mean, I scream and I talk to this with the realtors that we have on all the time, and they agree. They'd rather have somebody know exactly what they can afford, you know, and know exactly what type of payment that they want out of the gate, rather than showing them something and then the deal goes south and they're not happy, and it just makes for not a really good, pleasant experience for anybody that's involved, I think.
Yeah.
Let's talk about, we've seen these over the last couple decades. We talked about the evolution of where the business went, right? We talked about the beginning of the business. You came in, was like a rocket ship, right? 2003, 2004, 5, 6, and boom, and then crashed. Then it came back in 2012, 13. Then we decided, I think it was in 2000, I decided back in 2002 I wanted to live in Florida, but due to circumstances, our son, my stepson Anthony, was here up in the Northeast, so we kind of had to hold out. But I remember in 2015, I think Ant must have been, I think he was
15.
a sophomore. He might have been sophomore or freshman. And I told you, I said, as soon as he graduates, we are out of here. Now, I don't think you were 100% on deck at that time. You can talk to that, but I know in my heart you weren't. So I created a vision board at that point in 2015. I made this vision board. I put these houses with palm trees. I put these nice, beautiful houses with huge pools. I put houses with the ocean in front of them. I mean, I put this vision board together. I put numbers on it, and I wrote out on an index card, and I wrote out my goals, my futuristic goals of what I was going to do when I moved to Florida in 2019 or end of 2018 when Anthony graduated. And every day I would look at that board every morning and every night. I mean, to the point I would have tears in my eyes believing that that's where I'm going. And I called some realtors down here. Fortunately, I had some really good friends. Hopefully Christy will be on our show soon in the next few weeks, but one of my closest friends here, and she used to work with us back up north, I think from 2011 and 2012. And I remember the day she told me in 2012, if you're watching, Christy, this is a plug for you. She's like, I'm moving to Florida. And she told me Southwest Florida. And, you know, as many of you know that watch any of my podcasts, I lived down in Clearwater for one year of my high school years, and I fell absolutely in love with the West Coast of Florida. I've wanted to be back ever since that. And I was going to say I was a little jealous of her that she was coming here, but happy for her at the same time. But I called Christy in 15. I said, Christy, I'm coming there in 3 years. I need to start building my book of business today, so when I get down there, I'm not coming down cold. And I'm forever grateful. Love Christy like that. She trusted me and she knew me, but you know, she was able to encourage her clients to trust a banker who was in New England. And it's funny because a lot of the people that I closed through those years, I'm friends with a lot of them now here, which is funny. Spend a lot of time with them, and I'll shout out to Chris Pilcher that's out there. You know, I had never met you, and we talked mortgages before I even moved here. And there's a handful of other people out here that are watching and may be watching. But we built that book of business early on and made sure that we had it. And, you know, through that relationship, there was other agents that would send us some business, which was nice. Walk me through your experience of the build-up and the move to Florida, because I think it's important for people that are watching that are coming from other states. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts with the move, right? For anybody, not just us, but our story, and I want to know your side of it, was, you know, we had 2 young kids. One didn't matter because my daughter, I think, was in kindergarten when we ended up moving. Yeah. So she wasn't going to affect her as much, but my son was going into 8th grade, and we knew that was going to be a big impact on him. And to the point where a lot of times I think people and parents sometimes, we're such a kid-centric world that they will put a pause or a break on a good move, because this ended up being a really good move for us, and they put their dreams on pause for a kid who doesn't know any better. They would have never known like Chris has now. He was kicking and screaming day one. But as a mom, it affects you different than it affects me. Maybe if it was my daughter who was flip-flop, maybe I would have been the one that was like, no, we can't do that to Marlia. But fortunately for all of us, it was my son, so I didn't feel as bad about it. And I said it's going to be benefit to him going forward. There's a lot of different other benefits. But what did that look like to you as a mom, knowing that you had our older son who was going to be going to college up in a New England
He was
town
in New Haven.
in New Haven, Connecticut,
Mm-hmm.
and you maybe in some weird sense you felt like you were abandoning him. I'm sure there was a little bit of feeling of that. I mean, I knew that we weren't, because I knew like he was more than welcome, but he made it very clear to us that he was never going to move to Florida.
Mm-hmm.
No way, no how, never. It wasn't going to happen. And I said, just let him come visit us a few times. I mean, come to the beaches. We'll just see what our lifestyle is. Kids don't know what they don't know. They don't know. They know what they know. They know where they grew up. They know their friends. They don't know the other side of it.
Mm-hmm.
In fairness to them. So walk me through what that looked like for you, that kind of journey building up to the move. Big decisions. Know you're going to uproot your kids. You're going to walk away from family in a sense, that unless they come down to visit or you go back up to visit. So kind of talk me through your side of that.
So I think most, Anthony being in college, I did feel like, instead of him going away to college, I was leaving him, So that was hard, not being able to jump in a car and get to him if he needed. Leaving our house that we lived in for 14 years.
Yeah.
But it was something I just knew that we had to do. So even though it was hard watching Chris, leave his friends, because he was in 8th grade. But that summer before was when Anthony graduated.
Mm-hmm.
And Anthony and I went on a cruise, and then Christopher, you and Marlia came down to visit, and we brought him to, was it Lido?
We were on Lido Key, yep.
Yeah, at a hotel. And I remember him saying, so if we do move, would we live around here? And I was like, oh my gosh, he's thinking.
Yeah, he's thinking.
You know what I mean?
It
There's
might be
something
okay.
like.
Yeah.
And then we went back, and he was supposed to actually go to Europe that year for soccer, because we traveled everywhere for soccer. And then all of a sudden, a month later, he was just like, all right, well, let's just stay till Christmas. And we just knew that, all right, he's kind of okay with it. We just had to go. That was our window to go. So.
And you came down sight unseen. So, I mean.
Yeah, you and my 13-year-old son picked our house.
We picked the house we were living in. So, to kind of back up on what happened there. So, I was torn. I had some realtor friends in St. Pete, and that was the market I really knew. I spent a lot of time in St. Pete from, I think it was like 2009. I spent like 4 or 5 months straight here building some stuff. And I had some good realtor friends there. And then I had Christy and some realtor friends here in Lakewood Ranch. Now, it wasn't a pick of Lakewood because Lakewood Ranch was by the beach and St. Pete was by the beach. I wanted St. Pete because I always thought if I moved to Florida, I want to be on the beach, on the water. I want it to be a block from the beach. I could walk to it if I wanted. That was kind of the deal. And I think that was kind of what you said. If I'm moving to Florida, I want to be by the water.
Yeah.
And I remember it was at the time. So to kind of share with everyone, let me just take a peek here. So I want to check on my time. I had to decide where we were going to live. I'm like, okay, so are we going to do it here or are we going to do it down in Lakewood Ranch? So there's a lot of moving parts. I'm thinking about schools for the kids. I'm thinking about where am I going to get the best bang for my buck and where I'm going to spend the time.
Yeah.
So we were originally going to be like, I called Christy. I said, Christy, I think I'm going to go to St. Pete's, where I'm only like a 30-minute drive down there. I'll come down every day, which we're used to. Being in the Northeast, I would drive to Boston. I drove to Boston every day for 2 years. I drove there every single day from Worcester, which it's like a 45-mile drive, and which isn't a 45-minute drive. It's an hour and a half drive minimum each way. So it was no big deal for me to drive. So when I said that to Chris, she's like, you don't understand. You can't just come down here. You got to be here to get the business here. And I just didn't get it. Because I didn't get it because here I lived in Massachusetts and I'm writing loans in Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Connecticut, Mass. I didn't have this boundary mindset in my mind until I actually lived here. And I saw that. I think it's because you have these little micro communities in a sense to where people don't really need to leave more than 5 miles from their house to get everything. They got their shopping malls, they got their restaurants, they got their grocery. They got 10 grocery stores within, not 10, but 3 or 4 within 5 miles of the same one, like big, massive grocery stores. So I didn't really understand that till I got here, but we had already had a couple houses picked out in St. Pete that I could have rented. And what ended up happening was we put our house on the market, remember? And I think we put it in just a little, like a month too late, I think. There was like a hot market in the beginning of the summer, and we didn't put it on till after Anthony graduated. So we should have probably put it on in the spring. It would have moved fast. Prices were good, were going up. And we put it on, I think, in June because we had to do some stuff to it. And then it just didn't move. We weren't getting the price that we knew we needed to get for it. And at that time in the beginning, someone sent us some mail. And, in it said, I would love to talk about leasing to own your house. And I was surprised we didn't throw that out. I don't even know why we didn't throw that out, to be honest, because it wasn't even a thought in my mind to lease to own. And I remember looking at it and be like, no way, we're selling the house. And then once the sales contract was up, I think in October. Now we're already in October. Chris is already starting school. And I'm like, I'm at a point now, because I think I was 43. I'm like, I probably have 50 plus more winters. I don't even want to have one more year. Like, I want to have 50 something summers, like through the winter. I'm not going to be here this winter somehow, some way. So long story short, we revisited. I called the gentleman. And I got to tell you, I got to thank him too. I mean, that was awesome. We went through a journey together with him for 3 years, pretty much of him leasing the property. Never didn't make a payment, even through COVID, which was a scary time, right? For everybody. A little more so for us because we had a couple things on the line, right? I had a mortgage that had to be paid, and people weren't paying mortgages, and it was like almost okay for people not to pay rent, right? So that was scary. But anyways, he had called, and he said, what did he say? He said, let's meet. And we met with him, and we came to a deal where he had put a down payment, a lease to own, and now he already had a move-in date of our house. I think it was like December 27th he was moving into our house. And we're still in December. I don't even have a place. And something clicked in my head at that point in December. I said, you know what? I went to you. I said, we have to go to Lakewood Ranch. We're going to Lakewood Ranch. And when we came to visit here, it was nice, but it seemed so far from the beach. I was like, man, it's just so far from the beach. It's not what I thought in my head of moving to Florida. I'm going to be right down the road. And it's not that far from the beach, but it's just not, it's not a walk to the beach. I mean, we're 15, 20 miles, which could be 30 plus minute, 25-minute drive. And when we're out of season, it could be a 40 plus minute drive in season. So it's not far in the sense that it's far to live there, but it wasn't what my ideal was. So I called Christy. I said, Christy, you need to find us a rental, and I'm going to fly down there next week. And I think the only reason I took Chris was because I wanted him to buy in. I wanted him to feel like he was picking the house, so he had like some choice in it. But tell me, I mean, how that was, because we saw the house. I knew I was all in. You had never really. You've been to Florida on vacation. That's a lot different than living somewhere. I had lived down here, so I already knew what the lifestyle was in a sense. Like, I had it in my head. I knew it's been exactly what I knew it was going to be. What was that drive like for you? Like driving down in the car with, the kids, and you haven't even seen where you're going to live yet. I mean, maybe some pictures, but what was that like?
I don't even think I really was thinking about that stuff. To be honest, I think I just was like, it'll be fine. I think sometimes when you get to a point in your life, you need something different. You just have to go for it.
You're just going for it. And you just grabbed it. You grabbed it. So fast forward as we kind of wrap up the next probably 10 minutes. I think we got about 10 minutes. Yeah, exactly 10 minutes. See, I'm getting good at this thing. I said 10 minutes and 26 seconds. we came down here and everything just clicked. Everything just was everything happened fast and quick. I mean, I think we opened up the doors to our office. Actually, I know, because on my card that I put out, I said, I am so grateful. Thank you, God, for allowing me to open up my office March 7th, 2019. Now, this was 4 years ago I wrote this. I literally signed the lease on March 7th, signed the lease, and I didn't even like push to sign the lease. It just happened that way, which is God, a miracle for God. But everything clicked. The community was awesome. We knew, I knew anyways, and I want to know if you knew right away that we made the right decision to go to Lakewood Ranch versus St. Pete Beach. Like, how did you feel on that decision? Like, once we were here a month or 2 months, like, like, oh, could I have went there? Well,
I mean, we knew people here, well, with Christy and everything, and then finding church, and then we realized Bayside was a mile from where we were renting. And then you started, with the men's group.
Yep.
And then we I think, that November, we had a Friendsgiving at our house that we were renting, and we had 60-something people there.
Yeah, it was
and
crazy.
we had only been there for
it's 11 months.
11
9
months.
Yeah.
So it clicked, and,
What would you say, and not that I'm promoting Lakewood. I do promote this area because I love it. I love that we live here. I think it's a special place in the sense that it reminds me, Lakewood Ranch as the #1 master plan community in the country now, I think for 3+ years running. For multi-generational, it's the #1 multi-generational master plan community in the country, year after year after year. It reminds me of what it may have been like mid-century, like in the 50s, where community, neighborly, people, the community doing things together, very active. It's just what it reminds me of. And I think people are purposefully coming that want that. Not everybody wants that, right? And that's great. But the people that want that those are the people that are coming here because they're looking for that. They're looking for that old feel where you can let your kids run outside and the neighbors play with each other. Neighbors hang out, the kids play with each other, they have fun and run around. And I think you don't have a lot of places. At least we didn't have a ton of those types of places in the Northeast where people are flocking, and they're wanting that sense of community. In the sense of, do you find that it was beneficial for our kids?
Yeah, well, I mean, the people that don't know, so Anthony, even though he started at New Haven, I think 9 months after we moved here, he decided he didn't want to go to that school anymore.
Well, he didn't want to go to that school too, just so he was in what was he doing? Criminal justice, and he just found that he didn't like that. And he's like, I want to look at something else. But he could have said, I'm going to UMass or I'm going somewhere.
Well, he could have went to any Massachusetts
Anywhere.
State school for free because his grades. And I just happened to say, what about Florida State? And he was like, all right, sign me up. So he came down to Florida, still with the intentions of true Bostonian, going back. And it was the year before he graduated, he went back up there. And then when he came back and said, I think there's more opportunities here for me, for different things that he wanted to do. So I think not just Lakewood Ranch, but I think Florida is growing. I think for younger generation, the opportunity is huge for them. And I mean, Christopher, he's up at Florida State now, and I think now he would probably say thank you for,
well, he has taken him here. I would threaten him sometimes. I'm going to ship you back up to your grandmother's and go back to school up there. And, when you're a kid and you're in high school and you're hanging out at Siesta Key Beach for fun or even like our UTC mall, there's just so much stuff for people to do and kids to do. And I think even the church communities as a whole, not even just any specific church, that culture for kids to be in a good, healthy environment is booming here, where you didn't have that up in the Northeast.
Yeah,
so
for
I
kids
think
to go to youth group and to go to church here is absolutely normal.
and
I
cool.
think
like,
when you
yeah.
meet people, they're like, oh, what church do you go to?
Correct.
That's like, not how's the weather? What do you do
Well,
for
yeah.
work?
Where do you go to church? Because I want to know where to go.
Yeah. Oh, you go there, like, oh, I'll meet you at second service. You know what I
Correct.
mean? It's something that's normal. So that was a benefit because he was able to
Plug in.
plug in to
Yeah.
different groups.
Yeah, and I think that
that.
thrived. What was the name of the group that he was in? That he would. I forget the name of the
Young Life.
Young Life. Yeah, that was a great group for him. I mean, they did summer things that they
Camps
did. So
yeah.
I think it's like a lot of people or people that have been on the fence about coming down. Should I do this? Because my kids, how are they going to do it? We found that our kids thrive. Anthony's now living in Tampa, which I believe is Tampa and St. Pete have been claimed number one for that younger generation. They're coming here from all over the country to live in these two areas. From everywhere. And I think it was in U.S. News or something just recently. I just read it, that Tampa, St. Pete is the number one spot for, I think, 20 to 30-something-year-olds. Which is a big pocket. And that means it's not the old Florida that we used to know where you just go to retire, No, this is thriving and growing, and it's something that people are going to do. And I got 5 minutes with you, Julie. So one of the last pieces we need to talk about before we wrap it up is investment properties. We do a lot of investment loans down here. But not only do we do a lot of investment loans, we do loans called debt service coverage, which you can talk about because you're like a master at these. Probably 15 to 20% of our portfolio are these programs for property investors. However, you are like Barbara the Builder, right? So all these people that are watching, Julie here, literally will go into a house, retile it. She'll do everything, soup to nuts, hang new fans up. And I will do absolutely nothing except give the money because I do not like doing that. It gives me complete anxiety, but I have, like I had in the beginning of my career, I had free labor then. Now I got free labor now on my investment property. So talk not just about the loan, but talk about what you found, buying some of these homes wholesale, working with these wholesalers, kind of walk through that journey. You love that side of it. So this is a passion for you, and I want you to share that with people.
Yeah, I didn't really realize how much of a passion it was. I know I came to you, I think, in 2021 and said, hey, I think I want to buy, a property. I want to start flipping properties. My journey with real estate started 23 when I was 21, actually. So however, I don't know, 5 years ago. When I worked as a bar manager, a lady, she lived across the street, and she came and said, hey, my sister's house, it's going in for foreclosure. Do you want it? And I'm like, okay. Because at that time in the real estate business, it was the newspaper. Like, we didn't have Zillow and Realtor.com. No. So I would go through the want ads and call the realtors and try to set up appointments. Well, the market at that time was so busy that by the time I got out of work to be able to even get there, they were like, oh, it's under contract. So for her to come to me, so I was like, okay, that's fine. It was a 4-bedroom, 1-bathroom.
Yeah. How old were you? Just
21.
21. Yep.
And she, long story short, she signed the deed over to me. One of your friends, who was my friends, that we didn't know each other at that point. Yep. I knew that he did mortgages, so I was like, hey, I want to buy this house. I was only making like $450 on the books a week, so I don't even know how he got me a mortgage to be able to do it. But I bought it for $61,000.
Probably one of those ninja loans.
One of the wild, yeah. No, those days, that wasn't that days. I needed $16,000 to close, and I only had $8,000. So, looking back now, it's like, well, God really wanted me to have that. I don't think he condones gambling, but while I was managing, it was all the old golfers out on the course, so they never came in the bar. Like, maybe I'd sell like 2 beers or something. I would play Keno. And, 4 numbers you win 100, 5 numbers you win 450. And one day I'm like, you know what? That's just not going to be enough for me. So I started playing 9 numbers. So 9 numbers would be 40,000. So I'm playing my future tips now because I didn't have any tips because I didn't sell anything yet. So I would just hope that by the end of the day, like, I wouldn't have to give my own money into the Keno drawer. And, there was this whole thing like you put the ticket in at the last second because maybe you'll trick the system, all those things to try to win. Well, it was a $5 ticket, so it was $1 a game, and I ran the same ticket through twice, but I was too late to avoid it. So I'm watching it go, and then I'm like, oh my gosh. So 8 of my 9 numbers came up on the ticket that I ran through twice. So I won 4,000 and 4,000. So when I look back now, you know what I mean? What a miracle to have that happen. So then I could buy the house.
Yeah.
I just was very persistent. I had to stop a foreclosure. I had no idea what I was doing. The lady just up and left. She left the house with all of her stuff in there, photo albums, everything. I after found out they had a huge drug issue. You know what I mean? That her and her kids or whoever was living there with her. So I had to, renovate and revamp that whole place. And it was just, when I think back now, like I don't even know how I made that happen at 21. Yeah. And it's crazy that I ended up in the mortgage and real estate industry from back then. So something was pulling me when I was down here, like, I want to find that $61,000 deal, which I didn't find the $61,000 deal, but I would always, through the years, look at houses, and I don't really even remember like what drew me to this one house. And I was like, well, let me just go see it. Down in Inglewood, we had an employee that lived in Inglewood. She always talked about the beach and, the bars and the live music. And she was always doing things. So I'm like, well, maybe that area is good. And it's only $175,000. So what can go wrong at $175,000? Like I've got to start low. So I went down, and it was risky because you had to give the wholesaler $5,000 and they were going to keep your money if you couldn't close. And I didn't have the money yet. I didn't even have any hard money lenders. They just said, all right, call this person. And the kid was like, okay, yep, here's what your terms are going to be. And when are you closing? And I was like, well, they told me I have to close in 14 days. And that was all she wrote. And then I went ahead and bought 5 more, right? 5 more. Well, one of them was a new construction. So I let you decorate that one because that wasn't fun for me. I like the ones that no one wants to touch.
And I did it the smart way. I actually went to the furniture store where they delivered it, where you, on the other hand, will buy on Marketplace and make me go pick up the stuff, which I'm not that excited or crazy about. But now, I mean, you've actually fixed up, I think, 5 of those houses. One you sold. The rest that we're going to hold on and rent. Yeah. But you think it's that service coverage loan? I mean, you're able to get the money based on what the market rent is of the house, which as long as the rent roll can pay for that mortgage, then it's a good option for you.
So when you buy these wholesales, you buy them with hard money. You have a 6 or a 12-month period that you have to either sell it or you have to refinance out. Yeah. So the debt service coverage is good because you can close it in your LLC's name. You do have to personally guarantee it, but you don't have to give tax returns or W-2s, pay stubs. So it's pretty much the principal, interest, tax, and insurance if the rent can cover it. However, it's such a high market that now they're coming out with the ratios don't even matter. Or now they'll use AirDNA, which is like Airbnb figures. They'll use that to help qualify. Wow. So that market is expanding so drastically that it's not just this needs to cover this anymore. They're niching it out. So pretty much anybody can.
They're evolving that program.
Yeah.
All right. So that's good to know for anyone if you're a realtor watching or just somebody that's interested in possibly investing in properties. Julie's the one you want to talk to on this because she's an expert. Not only does we write a lot of those loans, but she also does a lot for herself, but also does a lot of property investing. And I think that's important. So do you have anything you want to say as we close out? Do you have any closing words of wisdom, if you will, for me? Well, you always seem to have some when we're at home, so I figured you might have one here.
No, I really don't know how you got me on your show.
Trust me, this wasn't easy to get you on, but I think it was important because I wanted people to see my better half, and you're the person that really keeps the engine running in the sense you run all the operations, and you really do so much for us at our mortgage company that I think it's important for you to be. Sometimes, the people that do a lot of the work, they don't want any of the limelight, and I think it's important to know a little bit of the story. You guys got a little bit of a snippet of kind of a short Reader's Digest part of our mission, but what I want to say is I wanted to say thank you for watching us. But if you guys have any questions, if you guys have anything to add, if you're a business or you're a couple that are in business together, you like to sit down and have a coffee with us or a lunch or whatever, we'd love to share experiences. And, I think we're stronger in numbers, and I appreciate people that do that. I mean, again, it's not easy, but I think it's harder. Why would you not want to be? Like I think you said earlier, you know what I do. So if I have to take a call, it's not an aggravation for you. It's just part of what we do. So when you have that kind of unity outside of your regular, even in your business hours, I should say, then that's a big deal. And I just want to say thank you guys for watching. We're bringing on guests. So if you, if you have something you want to talk about, set up an appointment with me. Let's sit down and have a coffee or a bite to eat, and I would love to have you and share your story and your wins, especially here in Southwest Florida. Soon we're going to be expanding out to have some guests in the other markets that we work in. We write loans in 50 states, so it's important for our other people. I want to be able to bless you guys with a platform that you can share, and especially something to share that can help others. That's really what this is about.
Yeah.
And I love you, and thank you for coming on the show, and I appreciate you actually let me drag you out here today. So
thank you. It wasn't as
you.
bad.
It wasn't as bad as you thought, right? That's what I try to tell everybody. I say it's not going to be that bad. I promise. We're just going to have a conversation. So join me for a conversation. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for this episode and the next episodes. Thank you.